meeting to order. We've done a sign-in sheet for roll call, but Mark Vance here, Sheila Stock-Smith, Mark Winkler, Tom Osborne, Lisa Branham is on the phone, Terry Shearholz, Leslie Scrow, and Mike Hurwitz are present, and we have quorum. First thing on the agenda is approval of 3 sets of minutes, the December, January, and February. I'll start with the December meeting minutes. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
All right, and is there a second?
Second.
All right, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. January 4th meeting minutes, any questions or comments? And is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and then last, the February 16th minutes, any questions or comments?
I just want to add that I asked Lynn to place my written comments that you presented at the meeting, but
Right.
I asked her to present that, or to put that in the record.
Okay.
She said she did, so.
All right, very good.
They reflect that.
And is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, very good. We'll move on to new business, and the first item is the Wyndham project, and I believe the mayor is going to speak, is that right?
Yes. So
Just
Mayor
to
will
kick it
provide-
off?
Yes.
Well, thank you. Actually, we have Reimer Crady from the SSGA, and I think Scott Larson from the Tower Capital Group, just to remind everybody how we got here. We brought forward a previous project that was turned down by City Council. After that, the contract had been lapsed with the previous developer that wanted to purchase the property. So the Tower Capital Group is actually the original owner, Al Rajabi, and his group. And through discussions, he listened to what the council and what the public had to say with regards to the need for hotel space. And so that's where the concept of the 250 Marriott Delta rooms would come from, and then 200 market rate apartments. Right now it's zoned for 200 apartments, so he's trying to put it all together. And then the incentive package that we came up with was geared towards that, where the taxes generated from the property itself would be put back into the project that would close the gap of the financial incentives needed. For myself personally, and I'm sure Scott will speak to this, Scott Larson, I didn't realize how expensive it is to redo hotel rooms. It's about $75,000 a room because you have furnishings and carpet, flooring, bathroom fixtures, all of that. Where with the apartments, you just basically do the flooring and the walls, and everybody brings in their own furnishings. So at that point in time, I did contact Ryan McCready because what I wanted to do is depoliticize the project where it would be on its face value. Hopefully everybody looks at it for its face value of the project in itself. And I asked Ryan McCready to contact council members outside of home. Alderwoman Lakeisha Purchase, we did meet with her, as well as the SSGA executive group, and they liked the project. Ryan's previous past was with the Decatur city manager, and he had hotel experience, so he brought that expertise to the table, which was helpful through this whole process. So we can't thank him enough for really getting us to this point with the developer. So with that, I'll just turn it over to them.
Mr. Chair, can I ask the mayor something?
Yes, go ahead, Sheila.
Mr. Mayor, can you just clarify, so Mr. Rajabi, he's the owner, or is Tower Capital the owner? Because
Well,
when I
that's
go
Scott Larson.
on the Google for Tower
Yep.
Capital, Mr. Rajabi doesn't show up on there. So, what's the relationship there?
I'd ask Scott Larson to explain it. It's limited partnership, but I'm sure he's the
Okay.
principal owner
Yeah, if you could just
of the
clarify
property.
that. It seems like in most of what I've read about the way when it's like interchangeable. Some say that Tower Capital owns it, some say that Mr. Rajabi owns it, so I'm just wondering who owns it.
Well, our particular dealing's always been with Al Rajabi and Scott Larson as the owners through this whole process. Yeah.
Yeah, Al Rajabi is the CEO of Sky Capital. Sky Capital is the parent company of our hotel company. Each of our individual assets carries a different LLC or limited partnership. So Tower Capital is the legal entity for the Wyndham across the street.
So Tower Capital has a hotel component, is that what you're saying?
Correct. Tower Capital is the ownership of this asset.
Yes.
Al Rajabi is the CEO of the company.
Right, but you
Correct.
have others that are, right?
Say
Tower
that-
Capital has others that,
Tower Capital does not. Sky Capital does.
Sky Capital does.
Correct.
Okay, so Tower Capital,
Is a subsidiary under,
right, but when I looked it up, it looks like Tower Capital is a lending organization primarily, no?
no.
Maybe I can explain.
It could be a different entity.
So Sky Capital is the parent company that does accommodations and hotel development all over the place. Typically, developers will set up a separate limited partnership for each development, so that way they limit their liability back to the parent company to that one limited partnership. So for example, if you look at a lot of developments, even around Springfield, and you look at the tax bill goes to some separate LLC or LP, even though it's owned by a bigger company. So Sky Capital is the parent company that does hotel development around the country. Each of their hotels in any given community are under a separate limited partnership. And the limited partnership is owned by the parent company, Sky Capital. And Al Rajabi is the CEO of Sky Capital. Right.
And
But
maybe
if
the-
we put something other than Tower Capital Group on this presentation, and then someone goes and looks at the tax bill and finds out, well, Sky Capital doesn't own it, Tower Capital, then it's going to be somewhat a little bit confusing no matter how we list it. So that's the general structure, is that fair? Yeah. And so developments typically take on separate LLCs or LPs to limit the liability of that development to whatever parent organization exists. Does that clarify it, or do you have?
And then maybe just one further clarification. So does Sky own 100% of Tower, or is,
Yes.
and then who owns Sky?
Sky Capital, the CEO is Al Rajabi.
But does he own it, or who owns it? Or is it multiple owners?
There are three of us in the company.
3 partners that own Sky
Okay, so
Capital.
3 people represent all the ownership of
Yep.
Sky?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. Hopefully that helped. That's a really good question, because it's probably something we're going to come across some other time when we make a presentation. So, my name is Ryan McCready. I'm President and CEO of the Springfield Family Growth Alliance, and I know you called a special meeting to hear from us about this project, so I wanted to say thank you for setting aside time to do that. This structure is known as the Wyndham Hotel at 700 East Adams. Like Mayor Langfelder said, I was the mayor, and Sky Capital, Tower Capital requested that we help work out a potential redevelopment for this structure that met and satisfied a lot of the concerns that came up under the previous proposal. I should note the previous proposal was only a zoning change. During that proposal time, it was not to the stage of the discussion where we knew what the incentive ask was going to be. It was purely a zoning change. This proposal is much different. This is a proposal for a full redevelopment of the property. The property would be redeveloped into a 250-room Marriott Delta, full conference, full-service hotel. Delta is Marriott's international upscale brand that they are now rolling out into the United States, but they currently have it operating in other countries. So it's an upscale, high-level product that would come forward. The property is zoned up to 200 market rate apartments, upscale apartments. We are saying up to 200 because the 250 hotel rooms will be created and designed first, and the apartments will come in based on what the available space is. The final design's not finished, potentially could be less than 200, it will not be more than 200, and there will not be less than 250 hotel rooms. That 250 hotel room mark is important because that's what we heard back from the tourism and convention folks and from the community as that level of what we want to keep happening in downtown Springfield. So sometimes I get questions, is there really that much convention business in downtown Springfield? Well, Scott Dahl and his team at the Convention Visitors Bureau just released their monthly report about conventions for just the month of April. Just in downtown, there will be nearly 5,000 individuals coming to downtown Springfield for conventions just in April. That's just downtown. That does not count conventions at the Crowne Plaza and other places. So yes, there's a demand. We need to have those hotel rooms in place. The property will be completely upgraded, including elevators, HVAC, mechanicals, windows, all amenities, all public areas would be redeveloped and renovated. Top floor would be turned into a tourist attraction or sky deck to attract additional business and activity into the facility. The developer has had and continues to have discussions with our local labor union leaders about a project labor agreement. Right now, they're working through the details as to whether they will need 2 or 1 because of the uniqueness of this project. So it's not a question as to whether they will or they won't. They will. They're just working out the nuance of that. Mr. Larson has a meeting tomorrow morning with Aaron Guernsey to continue those discussions. Aaron has told me that he's been talking to Mr. Larson for weeks and many years about this project, so he understands the need for the project labor agreement. The total project cost of this is about $58 million. The city incentives being requested at $18.75 million represents about 33% of the project cost. That's typically what the city has liked to contribute on projects. These incentives are important and needed for a number of reasons. We all know that post-pandemic has changed the hotel and accommodations industry significantly, and it's also changed how banks look at financing these projects. In order to finance these projects, it'd be very, very difficult or impossible to finance a 450-room hotel project. But by allowing the developer to blend in multiple sources of revenue by having the apartment revenue plus the hotel revenue, it helps them achieve and get interest in getting financing. The $18.75 million in incentives would come from a targeted sole project TIF. So this project right now is currently in the downtown TIF. It would be carved out and put into a separate new TIF. I should note that this project right now, due to decreases in assessed valuation, is not contributing to any increment into the downtown TIF right now. So it will not cause a revenue flow issue for the downtown TIF. The fair market value, according to the assessor right now, is about $2.75 million. At different points in the past, it was up nearly around, I believe, close to $11 or $12 million. So the project, the current increment being provided to the downtown TIF is not existent, so it won't cause a financial issue with the downtown TIF. The new TIF would be, with your approval and the council's approval, created. The agreement with the developer is that the hotel will continue to operate for the 23 years of the agreement with the TIF. The $18.75 million would be the maximum of the city contribution. Once that's satisfied, the reimbursements would cease. The city would also look to blend in hotel motel tax money and sales tax money in to help satisfy that $18.75 million incentive flow. Since this is a single project TIF, this project will only be eligible for the TIF reimbursement that it creates in its own taxes. So it will not be drawing revenue out of other properties that are creating increment into the TIF. That's an important note to make. Second, I know you probably know this, but just to clarify for the community, the way incentives like this are set up, a developer has to get approval from local government, get their project financed, bid it out, build it, operate it typically for a number of years before revenue starts coming back in, before those incentives start flowing back in. That gives local government a lot of oversight and control to make sure these things happen the way that the community needs them to happen in the best interest of this community. And these are the types of projects that the Growth Alliance endorses. Many times the assumption can be that developers are writing an $18.75 million check, and we all cross our fingers and hope that they break ground someday. Projects are not set up this way. The developer bears the risk of the project being successful. The developer has a vested interest in it being successful because the more successful it is, the more taxes are paid the sooner they can get the reimbursement back and get their incentives back. So we like the fact that they have that assessment in there also. The Growth Alliance support also was contingent upon the project labor agreement. We feel confident about that. Also subject to the developer receiving letters of interest for financing from financial institutions. They have shown me 2 letters of interest from financing from financial institutions. So we feel confident about their ability to deliver on the project. We also take a look to see if the estimated project costs are legitimate. At the end of this presentation, you'll see reference to the estimated average cost for renovating full-service hotel rooms done by a national hotel consulting firm. That puts that cost between $70,000 and $80,000 per room, and that meets with their estimate of cost that they have in place right now. Another incentive that would work for this project is what's called PACE. PACE is a separate energy efficiency upgrade program authorized by state law, and the City Council has allowed it inside the City of Springfield. This pertains to the energy efficiency upgrades, things like HVAC, windows, and mechanicals. These projects would be financed separately with a lending institution. That lending institution would get repaid by an additional assessment on the property tax bill that the property owner pays. They pay that property tax, it goes to finance the loan. This is separate from TIF, separate from any other levy that's on the taxing bill. Doesn't divert any money from local government. It's purely a financing tool. This is a tool that we hope to see utilized more around the community because it does not impact other taxing districts, but it does help the developer significantly because it reduces the upfront cash they have to come up with for projects like this. You have a letter of our support from the Growth Alliance. You can see the contingencies that exist in those letters. Now I'd like to have Scott Larson from Sky Capital and Tower Capital Group come forward and walk you through the project, provide you some photos and what the project would look like. At the end of that presentation, their financials are listed, and we're both happy to answer any questions. You want your slide to flip. Back there, you just give them a second.
Got it, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on your time zone. Thank you, everyone, for your time on the commission. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Appreciate very much Ryan and his team and the amount of time and energy they've put into assisting us to move this project forward. Again, we heard loud and clear from previous presentations with regards to 250-room hotel being a necessity in downtown Springfield. Everyone knows the story with regards to our acquisition of this asset and then the pending pandemic that slowed our ability to be able to perform at that time. We still carry the Marriott franchise agreement for this market. It is a full-service hotel franchise agreement through Marriott. There's a couple things that bear note with that. In the United States, little known fact, there's only 240 hotel companies that are authorized to own and operate a full-service Marriott in the U.S., basically 4 per state. Those are pre-pandemic numbers, but those are as we went through the Marriott Executive Excellence Program as a team to be able to provide and, again, own and operate a full-service property. We acquired this asset, again, with those plans in place. We were between 60 and 70% through the design development with Marriott when the pandemic started. Again, that changed our platform to now this presentation today. I want to run through, again, Ryan has been a great help. These 2 decks were about 150 slides, which we didn't want to go through all of them, but would like to at least take you top level through what the design platform looks like for the property. The team, Marriott design team, very much threw in and looked at historic Springfield, both from the President Lincoln standpoint as well as from Route 66 standpoint, and started blending those into the public space, into the lobby, into the meeting space, everything else. Existing lobby, and we can roll through these as fast as you'd like. Go ahead. Each individual, and if we can share this entire deck if somebody wants to go through the entire thing, but I wanted to just go through. This shows you kind of the feel to what the future of the property will look like. I really like this the glass stairway going up the edging there. On the food and beverage side, the restaurant will get a full makeover. This is all existing here, existing bar. This actually will be changed to show the design for the Nick and Nino's will go away. We will have a food and beverage offering on the 30th floor, but the sky deck will obviously be the most important portion of that, and that will come phased in as we start that design portion. A couple of things with regards to, just as with any other hotel brand, the Delta brand for Marriott has specific standards that we have to maintain through the course of the process. The meeting space, the offering of grab and go close to the front desk, the offering of a pantry for the guests. Keep going here. Current existing meeting space. And then each of this particular slide has a lighting package. And then on the mezzanine level, where the majority of our meeting space is, everything schemed out versus what's the existing platform, back of the house, front of the house. One of the last pieces that there's your public space and meeting space furniture. One of the last items that we were working on before this development was stopped is the carpeting was the last piece, but the grays, the blues. This is currently on the 28th floor of the hotel. There's what's called an executive lounge, executive suite. This is where one of the brand items that we will continue to keep there. This will be the pantry, which is a Delta brand standard. This is for the high point profile platinums, ambassadors inside the Marriott platform. This is where they have their own lounge, their own space to be able to go get snacks. It is not a bar, but it has a space for workspace and for snacks again. Fitness center and the pool get an upgrade, facelift for sure. I'd like to increase the size of the pool, but geographically I don't know how we would get down there and do that. It's a little small for the size of the building, but public restrooms get a full warmer look from what they currently are. New lighting package, new soft goods, new hard goods. And then the guest room piece, we picked this platform or this design space just kind of flows through with the blues and the grays for the public space. And then moving on to the apartment side, these first few photos are hotel rooms that have been converted into apartments around the country in 4 different markets: in Minnesota, 2 in Texas, and 1 in Indiana. These are, again, hotel rooms that have been converted to apartments. This is the design phase the design scope that we would use. Again, to point out from Ryan's comment previously, the 250 hotel rooms come first. Those get laid out first, and then from a space constraint standpoint, what's left, if we can get 200, fine, and if we can't, then whatever that number looks like, but it will not go over 200 on the apartment side. We will add workspace location for the apartment tenants, as well as some form of entertainment space. And this is, if you can back up one, please. This is the current, our pie-shaped building. This is our layout for, it's about 325 square feet, depending, some of the rooms are a little different depending on where the pillars are, but that's the layout for our apartments. Single bay. If we can, this is financial projections. I think Ryan mentioned $58,000 total. We have the baseline value of the asset, and then the estimated key, $75,000 a room. Pretty typical for a Delta by Marriott. We can show you on the next slide the HVS developers report. This is from 2020. It specifically on in this document shows that the Delta by Marriott brand, which falls into the full service hotel side. We're looking specifically at the soft goods number as well as the FF&E number. Since we are our own developer, we save on pre-opening and developer fees. But the average key price on a Delta is between $70,000 and $80,000, and we are confident we can deliver the Delta inside that window. If you can back up, please. The apartment side, our development estimates around $5 million. The infrastructure upgrade, which is the PACE program, we started working on and delivered RFPs over 2 years ago. Met with Aaron Guernsey and his team, as well as Johnson Controls. Jason Myers engaged his global design team, and this work is already designed, laid out. It would be a matter of just being able to figure out which can go first, but it is full infrastructure on the building: chillers, boilers, HVAC, both public space and in the guest rooms. It includes everything on the perimeter of the building: lighting, interior lighting, low-flow toilets across the entire property, windows, roofing. There's about 10 items on there. The only thing that is not rolled into the PACE at this point was the elevators. We need to get a full scope of what the modernization of the elevators look like. And that piece will go separately, but it's one of the items that needs to take place on the building as well. And then the sky deck, based on some preliminary estimates that we have from talking with a previous or another developer who's done this type of work before, about $1 million, and that will be owner funded as well. So as you can see, the funding sources that we're asking for coming from TIF, a blended funding from the TIF, the hot tax, sales tax, enterprise zone. That's the 18.7. The PACE, which again is paid back by the property. As Ryan mentioned, we have to be able to perform and produce the revenues and produce the taxes to be able to turn around and later down the road start experiencing the payback on these items. And then of this, $26 million is funded through ownership. A couple of notes with regards to if you're going to go build a brand new Delta by Marriott, the estimates for that are about $350,000 a key. So if you're going to build a brand new 250-room Delta, it's about an $87 million project, and we're hoping to be able to bring that with the help of the city at that 18.7. Good news is the building's already there. It's just a matter of the refurbishment component. And then another note to keep in mind is that the costs of this renovation do not include operating costs. China glass, silver, linen, Marriott has specific standards with regards to how they, everything, right down to the mattresses, the sheets, the linen, everything that they require are their brand standard. Those are not included in these costs. Those will be assumed by the ownership, as well as branded items, pens, paper, notepads, faceplates on the phones, and so on, everything that it takes to change from the Wyndham name to the Marriott name. Those items are come through the ownership operations. A couple of things that Aaron Guernsey and I spoke a couple of years ago. There are the PLA on this would include the hotel side as well as the infrastructure, the pay side. There are specific items. We want to go local as much as we possibly can. There are specific items on the Marriott brand standard. I may not be able to find some of those things locally. Right? There's inside the PACE program as well. There are new incentives that have just come out in the last 6 months. I met with Jason Myers and a company called PACE Equities, and there's new initiatives that if there are items that need to be purchased that come from inside the United States or inside the state where you're doing business or doing the upgrade, there's additional incentives that can come through. And that's all for anything to do with energy savings. But I think that kind of gives a pretty good idea of getting into some details. Again, we can share the entire deck on both of these presentations. It's about 150 pages. We just try to whittle it down to the items that are pertinent here today. So, questions?
All right, very good, thank you. Questions?
How many rooms do you currently have?
There are 400 in the 400 currently in the building, but it's pretty chopped up. There are rooms that have 3 and 4 bays. There's a couple of storage rooms up on the floors that are the size of a hotel bay or the current hotel bay that are accessible to be used elsewise. We've still have the TV station room up on the floors, but it's got the capacity to hold, depending, but the hotel rooms come first, and then we'll figure the apartments from there.
Thank you.
Sheila?
Can you talk a little bit more, maybe someone from the city, about what this blended TIF is? So, I mean, what is the request? I'm sorry, thank you. So it's the TIF, hotel motel tax, and the sales tax, but what is actually coming through this spot? I mean,
Just the TIF part of it.
The TIF.
well, yeah, but it's 1875, and that's the request for TIF,
Right.
but it says those other sources are in there too.
So the 18.75 is the total value of incentives that the city's being asked to provide. Those will be provided by the creation of this targeted TIF. It will create some portion of that incentive, but it will probably not create all of it. So the city also will have the flexibility to blend in sharing of hotel motel tax and sales tax that's both generated at the property to help complete the incentive requirement. So the TIF itself's not blended. The incentives are blended from multiple sources: TIF, hotel motel tax, and sales tax.
So I understand all that, I think, but this body just approves TIFs. So,
Yep.
so if we're approving an $18,750,000 TIF,
You're not approving, what we hope you'll do is endorse the creation of a redevelopment agreement that includes TIF, sharing of hotel motel tax, and sales tax. This is not just a TIF request. This is an incentive, a redevelopment package in its entirety. I'm not sure of your structure and rules of order. I know before, when they came up with just a rezoning request, so, right? When
Right, and
the
that-
proposal
that
came
really
up last
wasn't-
time, so.
Well, and
I think-
I'd have to ask Zirkle, but I would say today we're being asked to approve the ordinance that was presented to us, which would be up to $18 million of incentives, which, if I understand the way it's worded right, that could be all real estate tax, but most likely will not be. Because the real estate tax will be exhausted first, I assume, or will
Right.
incremental?
The TIF will only provide what the developer pays back into it based on their new assessed valuation. And so if the TIF would run short of reaching that incentive, the city would have the flexibility to be able to provide that from additional hotel motel tax or sales taxes that are created at the property.
So,
Is there an estimate of what we think will come from the TIF, or has that not been?
I don't believe we've done an estimate yet. We have to look at, that's usually, once you find out the final capital investment the developer makes, you can sit down with the township assessor and start taking a look at that.
Okay.
A lot of it has to do with other hotel projects, other similar projects that have happened in your community to figure out what the assessed valuation might be.
so has any of our other targeted TIFs, I know we did that one for Springfield Electric. We've got that one out at Lumber Lane, right? And we've got the new Adirondack. Are those the only ones? I mean, do any of those have this blended structure? No, so this is kind of new, right?
The TIF's not blended. The TIF is only property tax.
Right, I
So,
understand that,
but-
but what you're asking for approval is for, at least what I thought was incentives, but again, I mean, I'm fine to approve whatever. I mean, I'm for this
Yeah.
project. I was for it the first time, the second time, the third time, and the fourth time. I guess it's just, it goes back to sort of what is our authority as a body. It kind of keeps jumping around and changing all the time, which is
Yeah, I
fine.
can't
mean,
answer that.
I'm fine, but I thought that it was kind of decided that TIFs were our thing, and that was it.
Right, because that's all that's in the ordinance, it's just TIF, saying
It's just
18.7.
TIF. So, yeah, I mean, is it incentive, incentive package? That's really what it is. It's not just TIF.
Right.
Is that
Right,
correct?
what we'd ask, this body was formed to assess TIF districts and what the TIF should be utilized for. So that's essentially what you'd be weighing in on.
Okay.
It's up to the city council, of course, to approve the whole package. But
So
yours,
it's more, for
role-
us, it's
right.
more this idea of the targeted TIF. And the
23
rest of
years,
this
right.
that potentially would go into it.
And the value for the 23 years, again, the developer, I mean, we hope the project goes gangbusters and then it could be expedited, the reimbursement part of it. But the 23 years, the importance of that is to assure the Marriott flag as well as the market rate apartments.
So I have another question. Is,
Abby gave me some clarification. Lumber Lane is set up like this. So if the TIF
It is
doesn't
set up
generate, the property taxes doesn't generate the agreed to incentive level, that sales tax is also used,
Right.
so.
Lumber Lane was initially started to have the sales tax generation, and only after a period of time does that particular parcel generate increment, and then so the property tax would then take over as part of that.
Are these all studio apartments now? I mean, I know it's before, I think there were one bedrooms or two bedrooms, and is this, looks like it's all studios now?
Currently?
or-
Yeah, no, there's a couple of two-bedroom and one three-bedroom apartment currently in existence, but we have about 26, 27. I have a couple of out of order right now. The HVAC units are from 1973 inside those rooms, and so
But
we're,
of the 200, it'll be a mix?
it'll be a mix, correct,
It'll be a mix. And
Correct.
what would the rents go for those?
market rate. And if, right now, my average apartment rent is $1,100 a month, as it currently sits, not renovated.
For
That's what you're getting
studio?
now?
Correct.
For
It's
the
not going
which?
down from there.
For which, a one-bedroom?
Just as a blended rate across all of them.
Oh,
I think the two-bedroom goes for $1,400 a month right now.
okay.
We've punched every apartment complex within about a 3-mile radius of downtown and looked at what the comp set is, and we're going to be able to provide something that nobody else can provide. It's going to be,
For your studios, what do you sense would be around, the range of rent for your studios?
again,
700,
market
800?
rate, they're at least, I don't know,
Yeah.
800, 850, somewhere in that range. I mean, we have a very targeted approach. We want to partner with the hospital, and the residence program, and for the studios, it's exactly the clientele that we're going after. These are med students that They need to eat, a little place to cook, sleep, get back to work, which my son's in a program right now, and it's exactly what he has. Not here, but in another city.
Can I ask a question about?
Yes, go ahead.
Blended financing. So if we do the TIF, we're going to go through the process, probably 8-month process, or like we did with this other one where we do the publications. Is it similar to what we're going through now? So if we go through that process, we're going to set up a 23-year TIF. If this property assesses at $45 million, that's going to bring you over $1 million a year in taxes. And then you blend in the other taxes. At some point, you're going to get to the 18.7 million. We know in the past that there's been a lot of questions raised from taxing bodies who are missing out on those taxes. We surrender those taxes as taxing bodies. What's the plan with regard to once you hit the 18.75 million? Whether you hit it at year 15 or is the TIF money going to go back to the taxing districts? Are you going to pool it, or are you going to keep plowing it back into the hotel?
I mean, I don't work for the city, but my understanding in my negotiations with the mayor's administration and the developer, it's like once that level is met, then the incentives stop.
Incentive stuff, okay.
So that's the cap that's on top of it.
Okay. The, clearly, the first proposal met with resistance from Convention Center, Downtown Business, Alderman, and the Alderman voted it down. And we're back here again, and this seems to be a proposal that's a little more palatable for your group. I don't know if anybody's spoken to the Convention Center. I don't know if anybody's talking to the Alderman, but this one seems a little more palatable for the group. It looks like it's going to be a nice package for the downtown to allow downtown to continue to have the hotel rooms it needs for conventions. Don't know what you're hearing back from Alderman, but that's a big part of it. Our vote, while we think it's important, it doesn't hold, really. It's the vote of the Alderman that really counts. And I'm just curious where we are with them.
I'm speaking with council members and continuing to answer their questions.
Okay.
I have a practice of not predicting votes. Well, I mean, no joking aside, you know, I worked in local government for 20 years, and it's unfair for the public to think that someone made up their mind before the meeting, because the public comes to the meeting and offers input too. I do feel like, Mr. Aleo, that this proposal addresses the substantial concerns that were expressed under the previous proposal. We are in a unique time here. Springfield has this very important tourism industry that exists here in the convention industry, and we see that it exists. We have a structure that serves that in a significant way. At the same time, the owner of the structure struggles because financing to do a renovation of a structure that big is now challenging due to the pandemic. So the best way we can continue to support the tourism industry, help the owner get the financing, is to allow these multiple streams of revenue for the property, to allow them to get financed, but still support our tourism industry. Billions of dollars over the years have been invested in this community by local, state, and federal government in these tourist attractions, whether it's the renovation of the old state capitol, all the way up to the Lincoln Museum, to the preservation of Lincoln's home. I think we want to be in the business of maximizing the return on those investments and those assets. Having the structure renovated, I believe, is a great way to continue to maximize that return going forward. So I feel like this proposal on the surface could look like just what was here before, but it's actually drastically different because it's a full proposal. The letter of interest for financing exists. We have a clear incentive ask. We can support the tourism industry. So we tried to work hard to satisfy those concerns. Nothing's ever perfect, but we believe that the Growth Alliance believes this is something that can both help the developer and help the community. And that's always our goal. Yep.
Other questions, or did you have a comment?
Yeah, we also have Scott Dahl here from the Visitors Bureau, so he can perhaps speak and clarify any questions on the impact that this would have on the conventions and how this supports our current conventions and Visitors Bureau.
Yeah, so thank you, Robbie, appreciate that. Yeah, our main concern was meeting the obligations of the 35-plus large-scale conventions that we have booked through 2025. The previous development package included room nights that would impact at least half of those conventions, even if it's largest number of hotel rooms. The 250 hotel rooms now will get us within 2 conventions, and those are 2 larger conventions that have peak room nights of 750 rooms. So we weren't going to get there anyway, but really meets the obligations through 2025 for our large-scale convention. So the 250 does help, and that was our major concern with the other redevelopment plans.
Scott, do you think that this renovation, I mean, not only is going to meet your current needs, but do you think it's going to increase interest with a whole renovated hotel?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the way
Yeah.
the pictures, you know, I go into this hotel all the time, and when you go into something all the time, you don't really see much. But when you look at the pictures, you think, okay, this thing's pretty dated. And we're, you know, asking convention goers to stay there,
Yep.
right? I mean, obviously, maybe they still are. Are they using other hotels downtown as well? But I guess it seems to me that with a renovation of this, it should enhance our ability to attract conventions, or is it just sort of capped because there's just not enough space or room?
No, I think, you know, it's needed attention for 5 years, right? We've known this. Our conventions have stayed with us, thank goodness. It's the convenience downtown of having about 2 large-scale convention hotels side by side. They can park, they can walk, they can go to the historic sites, they have restaurants. So it's really that convenience factor. So certainly having a full-service property that's brought up to current standards will not hurt, for sure. So I think we'll be able to lock in additional conventions because of that. And, you know, hopefully down the road, we can pair it with a BOS center expansion and then really have something, right? Because I think at that point, we're not only looking at the 2 full-service hotels, but maybe some additional rooms even downtown. So, yeah, this could be the start of what we see as expanding our convention industry.
Other questions?
If I can say, I think Scott would agree, if I can say something else with regards to that, I think Scott would agree. One thing we haven't talked a lot about is having a full-service branded Marriott in downtown Springfield, Illinois. There's not another full-service Marriott within 62, 65 miles of here. Marriott's global sales team, they're the 800-pound gorilla in the industry. They are going to help Scott's team drive additional business into Springfield that we may not have had access to before. Some of those conferences that demand to stay at a full-service Marriott have not looked at Springfield previously will now take a look at Springfield, Illinois. So I think that you would agree with that's a fair statement of, will there be additional growth opportunities? Absolutely. And the technology piece also, some items that we're looking at that are inside that Marriott platform, it's going to be a win-win.
Scott, you're 100% in favor of the PLA for this project, correct?
Absolutely.
And you use local labor?
Absolutely. I think, as we mentioned before, there might be items, I think as Aaron and I talked before, there might be items that like the signage, that I can't get within the state or wherever signage is for the Delta brand is manufactured. There might be some minor items, but when it comes to the labor piece, absolutely.
Specialty things?
Yeah. Yep.
Joe, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say, for me, this feels like a better package with regard to the number of hotel rooms and the rental rooms, plus the financing of it. And again, we appreciate the opportunity to go over this and give feedback. Again, it's the aldermen that make the final decision on this. And with regard to this financial package, is there any outstanding debt that's a part of this financial package? Because that's an issue with some people here in the city.
Outstanding debt, please clarify.
Well, there's a utility bill that's unpaid, and I know that's going to come up tonight. You're not familiar with that? Okay.
I'll let you guys answer this.
I think we all know where the aldermen are on that issue.
Yeah, I think Alderman Hanauer laid out the schedule quite nicely. You know, we had a hotel on the brink of, you know, they stayed open during the pandemic, and where all the other hotels shut down. They stayed open. They had an agreement with public health as a quarantine facility. That never came to fruition, so they continued to pay utility bills, operations like they would, and move forward in that direction. You know, so everybody understood the significance of it. Some asked us to settle with pennies on the dollar. Thanks to them, they paid 100% of their bill with regards to electric and water. They paid the sanitary district, sewer charges, everything associated with it. Well, we had the, within our parameters were the meter charges, and Scott could speak to that. I think there's over 25 meters, which is an antiquated system. So that's what we waived. It's a monthly fee, as well as the demand charge. Demand charge is when you build out your infrastructure for all the businesses. It's not for resident. Businesses are charged a demand charge. So this was an add-on for each month that, you know, and that's what was the other flexible part. And so at that point in time, the agreement, we wanted to keep the hotel operational, keep them open. That was part of the arrangement that we did, so we could have it operational through the whole pandemic coming forward. So that was decided at the time of the executive session. So that's when we decided that. That's when we decided to say, you stay open, here's how we could help. We'll waive the fees associated with the meters and the demand charge. You pay the utilities, water, and it was within there. If they didn't keep up on it at the end, then it'd all be paid in its entirety. But that's how we kept the doors open to the Wyndham. And the lost variable in all this is our communications tower. Emergency communications, the city of Springfield is on top of the building, as well as CWLP. Nobody talks about that, because if we would have had to pay rent for that, Scott could probably tell us how much that cost us. Tens of thousands of dollars
Mayor, can
associated with
clarify something?
Sure.
I think we're all familiar with that, and that answer you provided. But it's the aldermen that keep talking about this issue. I want this thing to go. I think it's a good package. It's a better package. I think the alderman made a good decision last time holding it up. This is a good package. It makes sense. But I can see that as an issue tonight, holding this up. So I'm just, are you prepared to do something with that? So.
Yep. Okay.
I've had the benefit of spending a lot of time talking to council members about this project, and that question comes up, and it's something that we're speaking about. I feel strongly that the building owner was asked to pay a certain amount of money to retire the lien. They paid that. The lien was retired. If there's a disagreement amongst the governing body about how that was done, that's something that they can work out. But the lien was released, it was paid in full, so there's not outstanding debt from that perspective. The council members have been talking to us about their questions regarding that, and that's something that they'll be able to work out at the council meeting. So we won't be surprised by that conversation coming up, and that's part of the continuing conversations I keep having with city council. But to reinforce what the mayor said, you know, Tower Capital had a signed lease with the Sangamon County Department of Public Health to be available to house COVID-infected individuals that needed a place to go. With that lease, they had to be ready to respond if needed. It'd be very difficult for them to shut their hotel and then try to bring their staff back all of a sudden to be able to do that. So they agreed to be able to do that and stay open and continue to operate. The question is, and someone might ask, well, what's that worth? Well, I don't know what it's worth in dollars, but I think it's worth to be considered. I think it's a factor that has to be considered and recognized that they were available to do that. So everyone can have their opinions about that, but it needs to be stated. So, yep.
Thank you.
Mark?
Yes, go ahead,
So
Sheila.
I just want to make a comment. I just really want to commend the mayor and the city and Growth Alliance and Sky, whatever you call it.
Sky.
Because, you know, I think this has been a very difficult process. I can't imagine the number of hours that have gone into the discussions and negotiations and everything to get to this point. Like I said, I've supported it in the beginning and I support it now. I hope tonight we don't move the goalposts again, because I think it sets a bad precedent for our city All we ever hear about is how Springfield is not easy to do business with. And when we, continue to kind of, like I said, move the goalposts, so now the issue is $250,000 in debt, which wasn't the issue before, but now there's a new issue. So I just hope that, I'm not sure what the will of this body is going to be, but I get the sense that it's going to be positive, and I hope that continues through council tonight.
Yeah, we appreciate that support. And just to let everybody know, tonight's committee of the whole, and the council will have the opportunity to move this to a city council agenda on March 21st, and we hope that they do that. And then the vote by the city council wouldn't happen as soon as March 21st, and that's our goal too, because these projects have a shelf life, and we need a decision to move forward. So, thank you.
If I may publicly say for a second, and I appreciate your comments, and the city and Ryan, I think if any of you go to the hotel, I would ask that you thank my staff. What they've been through, and they have to live with this day in and day out. Yeah, it's an old asset. They're working their tails off to take care of conventions that are still coming, and then to be in the middle of this political football, for lack of a better term, they're the ones who deserve the credit. That day in and day out, they're the ones that are still plugging through with us and still generating tax revenues and everything else. So my hat's off to them and the city and everybody else. But if you're there and you see them, please thank them.
Good point.
Yeah, and just by the way, I went to an event there not too long ago, a month ago, and it was excellent. So your staff does a great job. I think that this is a shot in the arm for downtown Springfield. We need investment in downtown. When you look downtown, this is what it needs, and it's going to bring people and energy, not only convention dollars, but people who are living downtown, right? And that is something the community really, at least I see, we travel a lot. When people live downtown, they're eating there, they're going out to the bars, the restaurants, and more businesses. There are a lot of boutiques downtown now. They'll shop at them. We need that vibrancy. And it's a change of mindset as much as anything else, right? In my opinion, it changes it from, well, yes, downtown, kind of looks, at times looks a little tired. This is going to bring people, energy, investment, and it sends a signal to the community that we are invested in downtown. And I really believe that. And again, my thanks to everybody for figuring this out. It's been a journey.
Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have one real quick question. It's kind of a follow-up. We talked about the 18.7, right? Do you have an estimated timeline on, or a pro forma on when do you think, is it going to take 23 years? Is it going to take us a little bit less? I mean, as a member of one of the largest taxing bodies, it's my responsibility to make sure that we're in a good position, right? The school district supports growth and wants, more people in town and things of that nature, but we have to understand that we're continuing to get asked to do more with less. And
That's true.
18.7 over 23, or is it, is there a projection that it might be 10, 15?
Yeah, I would, I should talk to the Capital Township assessor to figure out how they're going to assess the value of it. I hate to I worked in local government enough to know that you shouldn't tell someone what the assessor's going to do unless you talk to them. They get angry about that. So I don't know how they will come up with the valuation for the property. Also, as we all know, property taxes are paid in arrears, right? So even after the project's done and completed and then the final assessment's done, there's still another year before that shows up. My typical experience is it's usually at least 3 years on any TIF project before revenue starts flowing back in.
Right.
I would anticipate that, but we really kind of have to see what that assessed valuation is going to be. But that's why we want this cap in place. So once that's done, then you're all done with that. And that was one way I was hoping to kind of get a little more comfort with it. But
Sure. The challenge is the last couple of projects have been rather large in size, Right, and as one of the largest taxing bodies as the school district, that's potentially significant that we have to start, planning for. And again, I want to make it clear that we're all for growth
Right.
and things of
Yep.
that nature. But it's getting more and more challenging, right,
Yeah.
with our funding.
Yeah, the school district's been very supportive of the work that goes on, and we appreciate that. We know it creates a challenge on the property. I mean, you're largely funded by property tax dollars.
Right.
And you do a great job with the money that you have.
Thank you.
And TIF is a tool that's been around for a while, been on multiple sides of the table in my career. I was a county person for a while, then I was a city person for a while. And I've kind of seen it from lots of different perspectives. Sometimes projects are just unique, like this one is, and the ROI with, like Scott Dahl said, with the access to the Bank of Springfield Center, another large hotel next to it, makes it different than any other kind of hotel project. But I will work to try to get some projections with the Capital Township assessor or the county assessor, try to figure out what that might look like. I'm assuming developers typically like to have that too.
Right.
Because, that's something that we're going to have to help them put together maybe for finalizing their financing package. And I'll be happy to provide whatever we can find out back.
And I would say with that uniqueness, maybe it allows us an opportunity to be a little bit unique in coming up with something a little bit creative where it's not so, maybe it's a percentage, stair step. I mean, just anything so it doesn't hurt for so long.
Sure.
Right, 23
Yeah.
years is a long time.
And because I don't work for the city, the
Right.
mayor's here, I'm sure he gets the message of, I know in some recent past TIF extensions, some things were worked out amongst the taxing bodies. I think those are good, healthy discussions to have about trying to recognize how that.
Thanks,
yeah.
Ryan.
Yep.
Yeah, and I appreciate the fact that you're doing this as a micro-TIF. I really, I just wanted to point that out. I think it's a very innovative and creative way. I know this is not the only one, but I like this idea because it has an incentive to the developer to maintain the property, to enhance it and keep it busy. It's to their benefit, as opposed to an entire area that, right, and the incentives are not the same. So I think this is a very creative solution, and I like it.
Thanks.
With regard to that assessment, it's going to gradually climb, and then it's going to plateau.
Right.
And you probably looked at the records, it plateaued at $10 to $11 million in value for 12, 13 years.
Sure.
Then
Yep.
plummeted. And I think what you're saying is, if they can maintain that value, they continue to reap the benefits.
Exactly.
So with regard to the blended funding, is that the hard-coded one that they're going to get that first and foremost back to them, and then the city council will decide the other blend of that? How's
I
that
think
gonna
that's something that, if the council approves this project, you're going to have to go through the process of carving this property out of the downtown TIF and then creation of another TIF, which is going to generate joint review board meetings, which a lot of you will be at those also. And as the one person that's not in that meeting, I would encourage you all to negotiate through that as you go through the creation of the TIF. If there's some type of arrangement that you can come up with that helps the taxing bodies satisfy that, I think that would be very healthy to do. But I'm not in a position to say at this point. But those are all things that are going to have to be talked about going forward.
That's a very good idea. That's a good idea.
Those joint review board meetings are really important.
Well, I was thinking of outside of the joint review.
Well, you want to work out
The other two
something.
mechanisms. The other two funding mechanisms.
Yeah, feel free to be able to discuss. I think those are healthy discussions to have in advance, so it gives you a chance to share what some of your concerns are and the impact that it has on your individual governmental bodies, and is there a way to negotiate that and work it out amongst yourselves? I mean, it seems like that's been the relationship recently on some TIFs, and I think that's a good thing for me as an economic development person to see that those conversations are happening.
Other questions? I do have a few, but I was just waiting until I got everybody else to say, other people ask the same ones. So with the, getting financing in place, starting construction, completing construction, is there timeframes we're going to put in place in the agreement that we don't have this out there lingering forever, or can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, part of the Growth Alliance letter of support, and I know the mayor and Sky Capital and Tower Capital have talked about the fact that they're going to have a hard date for achieving financing, a hard date for commencing construction, and a hard date for completing construction. going forward. That will be part of that development agreement. And that was our support for the project, subject to having those things in
And
place.
does your group or somebody at the city review the financial, I mean, I saw the projects, I just don't know anything about the financial health of the organization. I guess at some point they have to get approved for financing and they got to complete the project. But
Yep.
as things come up, as cash needs come up, I guess some review of the financial health of the organization requesting money. We look at that a lot of times in these requests, and I haven't seen anything.
Well, we work hard to determine the ability of a developer to deliver a product anytime we get behind a project. There's lots of ways we go about doing that. I don't typically advocate for private companies to present their financials out in public situations. That makes it tough for them. It also hurts them from a competitive standpoint. So the difficult thing about going through a process like this for a private company is, at this point, they've told the world what their business model is. And, competitors react, right? And so it's work that the Growth Alliance does to assess the quality of a developer. But I typically wouldn't, for a private company, present financials of the company publicly. Now, there are publicly traded companies that have to file financial reports, and those things are much easier to do. But it is something that we consider before we get behind a project.
And does the redevelopment agreement, if they were to sell the hotel in 3 years, does that transfer to the new owners, or how does that work?
Typically, assignability is subject to the approval of both parties in any redevelopment agreement, right? So the city would have to, if the owner wanted to sell that property to somebody else, if those benefits were going to be assigned over, it had to be subject to approval of the city.
Okay. And then in that case, we would either approve it or the incentives go away.
Right. That's right.
Okay. Is it safe to assume that the alderman downtown supports this?
Gosh, I hate telling people how other people are going to vote.
Well, they haven't came out and endorsed it.
We have the Alderwoman Purchase has been intimately involved in the discussions about this project. And she has responded positively to me. But once again, I don't want to ever discourage someone from coming to a public meeting and expressing what their opinions are. You see why I'm very careful about that?
I understand. A lot of times they come publicly and.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm sorry. She's a co-sponsor of the ordinance. The mayor reminded me.
Okay. All right, thank you.
That's a pretty good sign.
Yes, it is. I guess maybe a couple of those questions would be for Scott.
Sure.
Is any of the cash in this coming from the ownership group, or is it all either bank or TIF or PACE? Can you speak to that just a little bit?
It's, I'll use the word blended again. I mean, it's a combination.
Okay. But there is cash coming in from the owners, or is it 100% financed?
Blended,
Okay.
all of the above.
Okay, so there is some coming in from the ownership group then?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know, I guess this doesn't impact the sports park out at Shields that much because it's a TIF, but then we start talking about the sales tax. I guess it's a relatively small amount of that, but then if we have other hotels requesting this, I guess I'm just, maybe, and this wouldn't be to you, maybe me to the mayor. Has that been thought about? Is it just not a big deal? Because we're somewhat counting on some of those funding for other projects that we've talked about.
Yeah, the sports complex, we passed a hotel tax associated with that. But again, the sales tax is just generated from the Starbucks, whatever's on the property when if we decide to go that route and blend the rate.
So there won't be sales tax from the hotels that goes in to help fund the Shields Park?
No, the Shields Park, the sales tax generated from, that's specific to that area.
Oh, okay. I
That's
thought
how
there,
that
well,
agreement
I guess I'm talking about the hotel motel
The
tax.
hotel motel was citywide.
And is this hotel motel tax going to go just to this project, or will it help share to other?
That would, we'd have to check that. The increase, I can't remember what we increased it, 0.25%, would go towards Shields for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Their hotel local tax is what's generated from the property.
Correct. Right.
I think that's what he's asking is.
Yep.
Okay.
Hotel local tax would go to satisfy their incentive comes from what they generate at their property.
Okay.
But the 1/4%, that was passed citywide, so.
Right.
I'll leave that up to the attorneys to figure that one out. But I would say that was raised for the Shields, so that should be across the board.
Okay. The only other thing I've heard, and by the way, I'm asking all these questions, but I'm a banker and that's what I do. So I've heard a little bit of feedback. First of all, I think this is great as well. I echo some of the comments that have been said. But, like Joe said earlier, I've heard comments about the utility bill. Another comment I've heard is just, and maybe this is something Scott can help us all understand, I've heard that we've had, I don't remember the owner's name, but the president has had issues with other, I guess, cities and whatnot throughout his career. And I did a little Google searching just to see if I could figure it out. And, there's a little incident here, a little incident there. I found one lawsuit that was, it may have been dismissed. I have no idea what it was. But can you speak to that just a little bit so we know who is the person we're dealing with here? I heard this in the public comments, so I feel like if I'm hearing it out there, it's my duty to ask the question. And specifically, the one I was talking about was there was some lawsuit in Little Rock. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I don't. I'm not familiar with it. I wasn't part of the company at that time.
Okay.
I will point out that this developer, like any developer, this one particularly, has won Hotel Developer of the Year awards 4 different times, once from Hilton, twice from IHG, and once from Starwood.
Okay.
So he's bringing to the table that expertise, and if he's had some run-ins previously, I think any business owner may have scenarios, but I'm not familiar with that one.
Okay. No, sure, that's fine. I think that from the city's perspective, we should do our due diligence there if we haven't already, just to go vet these things out and they may be nothing, but I'm hearing it in the community, so therefore I feel like we have a duty to at least research it and understand what it is, and it turns out to be nothing great, but I feel like that's something we should do. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Mark, I just want to echo your questions, because I think it's, at least in my mind, it's come up in the past. I mean, what does the city, does the city look at all this stuff? These the financial health of the organizations, and, I understand Ryan's point about public disclosure. On the other hand, you're asking for taxpayer money, and so I think there needs to be, if somebody needs to be looking at this, and I'm assuming it's the city. And are we doing that when we review these projects? And
Yeah. We look at the economic health, of the developer and what they're bringing to the table. And to your question, Commissioner, regarding, the use of public funds, along with this, so we try to do a healthy balance of not putting the developer in a compromising position, as well as the city not incurring liability, at an increased risk. So we do assess and evaluate, the financials of every developer and project that we bring before the city.
Okay, other questions, comments? Okay, is there a motion?
so moved.
All right, so we have
To approve the, what is it, the ordinance?
the ordinance as presented in our packet.
Second.
Okay, Joe, second. I'm sensing we can do a voice vote here, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And is Lisa still on or
Yeah,
not?
she
Okay.
was just texted that she
Okay.
is in approval.
Okay, well, motion carries. All right, thank you for fielding an hour and 15 minutes of questions. But it is a big deal, and I think it's worthy of those questions. So, and thank you for your time and investment in that. Okay, we'll move on to Horace Mann project, and who's presenting this?
Yeah, just wanted to provide an update. I know the mayor just stepped out for a moment, so he'll provide the remaining of the update. But I wanted to clarify, exactly, I know regarding the historic designation and which is a contributing structure and which is not a contributing structure, and where we stand with the permits for demolition. So currently, Horace Mann H&M LLC does own both buildings, 622 East Washington and 618 East Washington. Both are within the historic H1 district, so zoned historically. 622 is a non-contributing structure to the district, and 618 is a contributing structure. So what that basically translates to, and what that means is that while Horace Mann applies for demolition permits, the 622 demolition permit has been released as of March 1st because that is not on a demolition delay. But 618, because it is a contributing structure to the district, is on a 60-day demolition delay. So that permit, while it has been filed, will not be able to be released as early as May 1st. So that is currently on a demolition delay. So we wanted to provide that, that clarification, that update, and I believe Mayor had some comments, as far as where we are with the funding and how the project is moving forward. So.
Okay, so I guess my understanding is then that, does Mayor have anything he needs to say about this? Or
If
you want to say anything about Horace Mann, Mayor? Or
Yeah, we had it on there for a status report. Unfortunately, the timing of it came pretty quickly. Horace Mann had purchased the property, I think it's the address 622, next to the one they had redone, and then the one that's really in question is 618. And so TIF dollars were awarded by the City Council. I did talk to Horace Mann. I think they're moving towards the demolition of 622. 618 is the one with the 60-day delay. And then there's still a developer's agreement associated with that and how the TIF dollars flow through the project that we need to determine. So we'll have a meeting probably with them as well as the Heritage Foundation and see if there's anything that can be worked out on 618 and moving forward in that direction.
okay. Any questions or comments relative to the Horace Mann project?
Let me just say, and I'll be brief, but I'm extremely disappointed by this, the City Council approving on consent agenda this project, which I think has enormous impact for who we are as a city, given the historic demolishing 2 buildings that are in the historic district. I recognize the importance of Horace Mann and what they contribute to our community. This is, since I've been watching City Council, this is the 3rd TIF request from Horace Mann, 2 of which have been for surface parking lots. Every study, again, since I've been watching City Council over the last 25 years, that the city has had, RUDAT, SDAT, whatever all the other acronyms have been, every single study has indicated that surface parking lots are not what we should be doing for a viable downtown. So I'm disappointed that this, I hope, Mayor, there's maybe some alternatives that are going to be able to be looked at where we can meet the needs of Horace Mann's parking, but also maintain and, the historic nature of these buildings. And I hear all the time the argument that these buildings are in such bad shape, and it sounds like they are. It sounds like they're in terrible shape. But you could make that argument of every single historic building that's ever been, many of them are destroyed, And I get, let me just say, I was up in Chicago. I don't know if anyone's been to the Dre House. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right, museum. But there was an exhibit there with a guy, I can't even think of the name now, but was someone who salvaged the Lewis Sullivan. So as Chicago was knocking down Lewis Sullivan buildings left and right, this guy was salvaging pieces of them, and there were pieces of that in this museum exhibits. The guy himself actually ended up losing his life when a building collapsed on him from salvaging these these properties. So I guess the point there is that maybe we can salvage something. Maybe some of the facades could be salvaged. They could be used for educational. They could be put up somewhere else in the city, or, I don't know what the creative solutions could be. But I hope that we consider at least salvaging some of the elements that could be on these facades, or inside the buildings, for that matter. I don't know, I haven't been in them, but thank you.
Yeah, the one thing I should mention with the discussions with the Heritage Foundation as well as Downtown Springfield, Inc., is due to the discussion that came to light through this whole process, is that we'd assess all the vacant buildings downtown, and then assess them and see what they need so they don't further deteriorate. But it always comes back to the financial part of it to see if we can build it up to a useful adaptive reuse. So that's the direction we're going to go, and we'll probably be coming forward with the City Council to ask for that type of request, because that will be a large undertaking to do that inventory assessment to that grade of detail, but it'd be beneficial so we don't run into this again if we can prevent it.
And Mayor, I guess I wonder, why are the owners of these buildings not held accountable for the conditions that, and I've heard that this building is in just awful condition, and I've heard other ones were too. That whole Adams, where we've got now J.P. Kelly's, and we've got the new wine bar, and we've got those buildings were in terrible shape. Almost all the buildings behind the facades are in pretty bad shape if you've been in them. So I don't understand why the owners of these properties are not held to account to some kind of standard.
Yeah, and the ones in question, Horseman bought the corner building. They redid it for over $1 million, and they owned the property at 622. 618, I think the gentleman bought it for like $15,000. So I think at one time he felt like he could fix it up, but I think with regards to the costs associated with that or what his intent is, remains to be seen. But with regards to those, that's the importance of the inventory, is to see how dilapidated they are. Usually with property owners, it's complaint driven. And so this way we could actually do the assessment and see where we're at this point in time with all the buildings, and determine the deterioration and what needs to be done to shore them up.
Mm-hmm. All right, other questions or comments? Okay, well, thanks for that update. Let's see, can we go through any of the project updates, I guess,
Sure.
somewhat quickly?
Yeah, sure. So just wanted to update the commission on 4 different projects that are currently pending that this body has approved. So with the Adirondack project, if you recall, that's the 136-unit market rate housing project that will be down 5th Street. We've had the Joint Review Board, where the Joint Review Board unequivocally voted yes, and unanimously voted yes to approve that targeted TIF. We are in the process right now. We've just completed a public hearing last week regarding that, and we're going through the process per this TIF statute. And the next steps will just be to extract that particular property out of the downtown TIF, and that'll be in its own ordinance, and then reinsert it as its own targeted, or like Commissioner Scro said, micro TIF. So that project is moving along quite nicely. The Taylor House project has been completed. We're in the process of issuing payment for that, so that is exciting. If you haven't driven by there, it looks very different than it was just a few months ago. So that project is now complete. The 3 West Old State Capitol is the development team from Michael Van Buren, Aaron Akery, and that project, the 3rd floor of that has just been recently framed, so that's been moving along. Anticipate the completion, by the end of this year of that, and again, those will be 9 market rate housing units, so that project is moving along as well. WRS Springfield Electric, the work for the demolition of that is completed. We will be issuing the first payment out of the increment generated from the Enos Park in the amount of $200,000 as early as April 1st for that. So just wanted to provide the commissioners, brief update on the current pending projects and how well they're doing.
All right, any questions or comments on any of those projects? All right, very good. All right, thanks for the update. Any public comments? Okay, seeing none. Anything else we need to talk about from anybody's perspective? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, second? All right, thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you.